Yes, indeed. Greetings again. Welcome once again to another episode, another chapter of the Reggae Planet Radio Showcase. With the voice of the Reggae Planet ambassador worldwide, yours truly, Rasta Ruben Kwabena. Today inside the spotlight, we're continuing the series about the politics of capitalism. You've heard the politics of capitalism, part 1, capitalism pretty face and ugly face, and part 2, capitalism pretty face and ugly face. Today, we're inside capitalism pretty face and ugly face, part 3, yes indeed. And we want to talk about the different forms of capitalism that is now competing to control the resources of the world, or to control the economies of the world. So we've all heard about the regular capitalism, and we've heard about the communism, and we've heard about the war between the capitalism society and the communism society. And we've also heard about the dreaded Cold War, which went on for years between Russia and the United States of America, or between the communist countries versus the capitalistic countries. Yes, indeed. And in this regard, what has been happening is a situation whereby a big competition between the two world views. Sometimes they call them first world, second world, third world, all these type of different terminologies, which is actually derogatory in the Rasta worldview, because inside the Rasta worldview, there's no such place for classism. Yes, indeed. It's just equal rights and justice, children of creation, children of humanity. But inside politics, they have different worldviews. And one of the worldview is socialism or communism versus capitalism or democracy. You see, so in the Western world system, it's usually called democracy or capitalism straight up. But on the other side of the world, the eastern side of the world, there is what they call socialism or communism. But lately, they have invented a new term and they call it state capitalism. And what this is all about is that in truth, both sides of the world learn from each other and they develop means, ways and means to use some of what they see to be working in the next society. Therefore, within capitalism, pretty face and ugly face, there is certain styles of capitalism or certain ingredients of capitalism that does work, that create jobs, create manufacturing, create, prosperity, because the more jobs the people have, the more they prosper, especially if they're getting good paid. So there was a time in the same capitalistic society where the job payment was really rising, and there was certain human rights or certain union rights in regards to how much they should get paid, proper wages that they should get paid. And that was making people sometimes used to have a good life, right? And be able to take care of their families and stuff. And in those days, a lot of times, once you have a good job, you have the job practically for life, years. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. In today's world, the jobs are not so long-lasting. They're not so consistent. They're not so durable. Because in today's world, there is not so much job security anymore. The jobs are no longer secure because the jobs tend to either get replaced by technology or they go overseas to different countries where they can pay the workers cheaper. But the whole point that I'm talking about today is mostly about what they call state capitalism, which is what China is really known for now. And state capitalism is in some regard a type of capitalism mixed with communism or mixed with socialism. In many ways, as we spoke about in the Politics of Capitalism, Chapter 2, Pretty Face and Ugly Face, in many ways, a lot of economies in the world now use a combination of both socialism and capitalism, or democratic socialism as some would call it. right? So even United States of America, there's a mixture of some social programs as well as capitalism, because capitalism can also make some lives rich and some lives poor because of the nature of capitalism, which is all about making huge amount of profits. It's really those at the top that benefit the most from the capitalism. You know, the fact that the big businessmen make good money, become rich, really rich. That is the pretty face of capitalism. But the hard-working actual workers in many cases remain poor. That is the ugly face of capitalism. The actual hardcore workers don't benefit as much. There was a time, as I'm saying, where they put in a lot of laws and a lot of union rights about how much the workers should be paid and proper pay and, you know, job security and all of these things. But a lot of those things have changed now, because what happened is that in China, they started to do what they call state capitalism. So the Chinese government did not change from really being their traditional selves, you know, but what they did was adopt certain capitalism system inside their economy or inside their worldview, while at the same time maintaining their socialistic overall worldview. So in that regard, the government actually owns a lot of the businesses. If they don't own it outright, they have a big hand in it. You know what I mean? So the government is more dominant, let's say. And I guess the whole idea of capitalism is, in some ways, is a fear of the government being too dominant. So the businessmen wanted to be more dominant, or at least to create a balance between government being so dominant and businessmen being dominant. You know what I mean? So the businessmen try to be more dominant, but in some cases it causes a lot of problems, because maybe the businessmen don't care about the environment, or they don't care about the health of the workers, or they don't care about the housing development, because they just want to make more and more money. Capitalism is basically all about making the most money possible at the cheapest cost possible. It's all about profits, and that's it in a nutshell, right? But the idea is that if you free up the market and people have a chance to do business and free enterprise, and the society supposedly grows. But it grows, yes, and it grows in many ways, but it also creates poverty also, right? So state capitalism now is a little bit different. It's where the government take more initiative. The government is more, you know, doing things, you know, doing a lot of business initiative, like what China is doing now with the so-called Silk Road, biggest infrastructure project in the history. Yeah, biggest infrastructure project in history. They call it the Belt Road or the Silk Road, which is a series of train system as well as ships and shipping routes and all of that. And it's basically so that China could ship goods and services all around the world much easier. So they're building big highways, big train system from China to Europe to England, you know, and even seaports in Africa and so on and so forth, all around the world. So you can study more about it, you know what I mean? The Belt Road system or the Silk Road, modern Silk Road. So state capitalism has proven to be largely highly competitive against the typical capitalism, because the state is more involved and the state, you know, more pushes where they want the country to go and the development and so on and so forth. You know, even Dubai, you would have to say that there's some form of state capitalism going on there, where the government is very serious about how they want the city to look and how they want the place to develop and everything. So they're not leaving it to the chance to just the businessmen, but they're highly involved in business as well. So that's what's going on. But the problem for regular world of capitalism now has been that because of the different currencies and because of stuff being cheaper to do, or labor being cheaper in China because of the different currencies and so on and so forth, a lot of great companies from America or from the Western world has shipped their businesses overseas to China. So in such a way now China keep getting the biggest and the best businesses are all being located there. Even if the business came from America or came from England or came from Europe, eventually the business moved their headquarters or their manufacturing facilities to mainland China, where they could pay the workers cheaper because the Chinese currency is different from the US currency and so on and so forth. And this has caused a lot of lost jobs in the United States and in Canada and in Europe. So in some ways, the state capitalism is almost outsmarting the traditional capitalism. Yeah, and it is causing a problem, and there is various, trade wars and arguments now about all of this. But the reality is not really, you can't really just blame the state capitalism people. It's just the way our capitalism itself is like, the way it works, that the boss man or the big businessman is going to try and find a place where he could do the same job at a lower cost because he wants to make more money and he doesn't want the big overhead. So if he knows that, for example, he takes the business to China and he could have more land to do his business and more space to build bigger factories at a cheaper rate and more workers to produce at cheaper rates, more materials to work with at cheaper rates, he's going to make that choice. You see? So capitalism itself is kind of turning against itself. The next big problem is technological unemployment. A lot of people don't want to talk about that. They rather blame immigrants and blame different countries and all of these things. But technology is also stealing a lot of jobs. Because back in the days, a factory may have needed, 1,000 people. Today, the same factory might only need 100 people because they got a lot of technologies and a lot of machines that are doing the jobs. So it's all about the pretty face and the ugly face of capitalism. And we want you to look into these things. Don't fight each other about politics. You got to look into these things as the young generation and find ways and means to develop new businesses. Because the truth is that it's not just politics that run the world. It's really business that run the world. As I said before in one of the previous chapters of this series, a lot of businesses in today's world are a lot more bigger than many countries. Yes, take for example Facebook and Google. They got like billions of members or subscribers or whatever you want to call that. If you want to look at it as a population, their population is bigger than many countries, or it's big as many countries combined. So it's a whole new thing happening in the world. Multinationals. They call certain companies, they call them multinationals because they're not just based in one country. They're based basically worldwide in as many countries as possible, right? And they're doing a service that touches the lives of many, many people. So in that regard, you got to look into these things and you got to realize that it don't make sense you spending your time fighting political warfare and fighting tribal warfare. The politics does play a role, and as the government makes certain laws and certain rules that maybe slow down certain companies or put some regulations in place and all of these things. But overall, the whole idea of capitalism as we know it is making it be that the businesses are bigger than the governments. The businesses are bigger than countries. The businesses have a bigger gross domestic product now. You know what I mean? The businesses have a bigger economy than the countries. Because maybe some countries have 3 million people, 5 million, 10 million, even 20 million. But some businesses have 1 billion people that are dealing with that business, billion customers all around the world. So therefore the businesses are getting more bigger and stronger and more belligerent. In this situation, many businesses have more money to work with now than a lot of governments. Yes indeed, the big businesses got more money to work with than the governments. You see what I'm saying? So, you can either sit around and complain about all these things or find a way to develop a serious business that really help to to change the world that you live in. People, comment, like, share, and subscribe. This is the Reggae Planet Radio Showcase, brought to you by Reggae Planet Radio. So just check it out. And you can like, comment, share, and subscribe right here. Tell your friends about this series. It's called the Politics of Capitalism, brought to you by the Reggae Planet Radio Showcase. This is yours truly, Rasta Ruben Kwabena, Reggae Planet Ambassador worldwide. Saying thank you for tuning in. Peace, love, happiness, and abundant prosperity. Thank you to each and everyone for tuning in to the Reggae Planet Radio Showcase.